Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Valdas Maksimavičius. I'm working at Cognizant as a solutions architect. And over the past few years, I have been leading research and development initiatives. And we were using prototyping quite a lot. So over the last 2 years, we had 15 different prototyping initiatives where duration was ranging from 2 weeks to 6 months. And we used prototyping to try new technologies, to learn something new, identify future performance issues, and find out what business, what clients really want. So if you had to guess, out of those 15, how many ended up in production? 0, 5, 0. So it's average, 3 actually. So you might ask, so was that a total failure? Was that a total disaster? I wouldn't say that, because we learned a lot and we identified what technology is mature enough, what isn't. And we learned a lot about clients and business, what they want. In many cases, we identified what they really don't want. And we learned a lot about ourselves, how we approach those prototyping sessions. So here we see 2 gentlemen. This one is us while working on production. We use all those good practices and we know how to deliver high quality code. But here, there is another nice looking gentleman, and it's us as well, working on prototyping. Have you ever heard this saying, cowboy coding? That means no plan, no tests, deploying wherever you want manually. Sorry? And going home, exactly, and not picking your phone. I have to admit, this is us working on prototyping, trying, building proof of concepts prototypes. And this is a huge problem. This is a huge problem because if someone starts working on prototyping, he was used to write tests, think about deployment, then he, for a week, starts working on this proof of concept, and those bad habits start to just go into production. And this is my agenda. I would like to speak about what we found that are appropriate rules for us. In many cases, you might not cover all your prototypes with tests. You might not think about deployment, but there are other tools, other processes that we think are really important. So to give you context, what we are working with, because during the talk you will hear quite a lot about cloud, about big data, about analytics. So I'm working with recommendation systems. Recommendation systems for marketing departments, for pensions, insurance, banking. That means identifying clients who might be interested in a specific product. That might be car insurance, child insurance, some saving accounts. Someone might say, Valdas, you are creating spamming engine. I'm looking from another angle. We are trying to create spam, but really interesting one that you might be interested in opening. And here we are using those machine learning-based algorithms to identify what customers would really appreciate. And now I have a question to you. Who of you recently got email or call from sales or from marketing? Quite a few, and others, you are so lucky people. Spam filter, yeah. But sometimes they're calling. For me, recently, it happens quite often that one company thinks that I might be interested in television plan. Every month, they are calling me. Hey, are you still interested in TV? And since I'm working with this, and I know that this is based on data, I started asking, so why are you thinking that I'm interested in your television plan? And the person was really polite, but then he answered some of it, that apparently I'm in a segment. That means I'm around 30 years old, I have a wife. So guys, if you are near 30 years old or above, you have a wife, so all what you need to happy life is a television plan. But let's move forward. So you need to have data. With data comes this huge pile of logos and different technologies, big data landscape. For me, for an architect, the problem with this is that almost each logo, almost each pixel has sales department. What they do, they go directly to business and they say that our technology is awesome. You just install it and it will work beautifully. What business does? They come to IT guys and say, Valdas, I need you to install this thing. Why? Because they said that it's gonna work, it will solve our issues, so just install this. And what we do? We try to separate what sales guys are telling, what is the reality. And there is gap. The question, how big the gap is. Next thing is cloud. Who of you saw this picture that was flying on LinkedIn? Oh, I'm so happy, just one person. This is how small companies, cloud-first companies go into cloud. One comment and the application might be just running. You know how it looks with pensions, with insurance companies, enterprises, the companies that are working with cloud migration? This is a huge dragon. We see a few senior developers, project managers are already dead. They might be, there will be second round. And this is me. So I've been working with this, and you will not believe that even small things, privacy issues, security issues, and in many cases it happened that we worked on greenfield projects. But even though we work on greenfield project, at some point of time, you will have to integrate that with software that probably is older than you. So, my agenda, 8 lessons that I learned while prototyping and while building, trying those new tools. The first one is naming. And when you are looking at a class, you are not saying this is interface. When you are looking at an interface, you are not saying this is class. So we noticed that there was a huge misunderstanding in the company. Someone was saying proof of concept. Another person was saying, yes, yes, we are building a prototype. Then someone else said, this is MVP. And this was a huge misunderstanding between project managers, what clients expect, what's the duration, what's the scope. So we defined this, that for us, proof of concept is an isolated exercise. We are trying just one technology. That might be database. We're looking at performance. And then we try everything, functional, non-functional requirements, how it works with backup, security, all what we need. But this is isolated exercise. Then prototype for us, we simulate the whole environment. Most probably there are some already tools or solutions that are already running. So the question is how it will integrate with everything else. And our main, or one huge lesson that we learned, we were working on a Hadoop cluster, and we decided to give prototype to our users. That was completely just working that much. And we gave to one user. What happened? User liked that, and he said, okay, I shared the access with 5 additional users. But it was a prototype. It was not supposed to go into production. So we have this rule now that prototypes, since prototypes are for us, we would like to gain confidence, learn about that. We are never moving prototypes into production. So then the question is, what's next? Then there's minimal viable product. Since we are confident with technology already, so then we are building MVP from scratch. Already having good practices, using testing, thinking about deployment. Because here, to be honest, it's Wild West. And this is how it is, and probably quite difficult to change this. So MVP goes to production. How it looks altogether, that might be different in many cases, but in our case, this proof of concept, isolated exercise, a few days, that might be hours. Prototype, we aim at a week, and it's already simulation of the whole system. MVP, we're already giving that to users. It might take months, but even if you have infrastructure already running, that might be even days. And then production. It looks like a solar system. So Mercury, Earth, it's going wider, and Jupiter. Next lesson is identifying proper questions. Who of you know what's the slogan of Nike? Nike. Just do it. Yeah, that was our motto as well. Don't think, don't plan, just do it. And what happens then? A few times we failed because we were very eager on looking at new tools, new technologies, and we just started looking at new database. That was MongoDB 3 years ago. But we didn't ask questions. So instead of using Nike recommendation, I would say, let's look at this one. If we have a problem, then the first hour or the first 55 minutes, try to identify proper questions to ask. If we go back to our big data projects, initiatives that we are running quite a few, so we have 4 pillars. The first one is integration, data quality governance, security, visualization, and analytics. And before starting any prototyping initiative, we have a list of questions that we ask new clients, new departments to ask, to answer those questions. Let's take an example. And this is a subset of those questions that we use. Will you be ingesting real-time streaming data? Yes or no? Because for us, it's a huge difference. We might miss this question, but then everything might change. How much data is needed for your use case? Are we talking about up to gigabyte, or it will reach petabyte? That's a huge difference. Then what type of data? Is it just relational, or you are planning to have some text mining in the future, text sentiment? Which source systems? Are we familiar with those source systems? Is it something that we already, do we have connectors to that? And then the process. And then we have many other questions. Let's say when it comes to analytics, if there is a new client, new customer, then we might ask, okay, what do you know about your customers? Their education, their family. Do we have social data about that? And only then, once we have all the answers, only then we start thinking about prototyping. Then we define hierarchy of needs. At least this applies to me, this Maslow's hierarchy. We have some basic needs, psychological needs, self-fulfillment needs. And I'm looking at this from this point. If a huge bear or a dog is chasing you, that's security. Most probably you will not be thinking about writing a poem, which is self-fulfillment creative. And there is another interesting point that quite often we forget about those two bottom needs, because we take those for granted. We are just thinking about creative activities, some esteem, belongingness, and security, food, water, it will be all the time. Why I'm telling this? Because we have something similar with software. Before starting prototyping, we create this hierarchy of needs. Let me go through this example. We have must-have, good to have, nice to have, and then you just write what customers are really looking for. And to us, it happened once that customers were really eager to have nice UI, have great reports, have this data science box. But no one was saying that they don't need, then they would like to avoid vendor lock-in. What that means, they would like to focus only on open source. No Microsoft, platform as a service, no Amazon, something that they can move. And we totally missed this one. We're just creating prototype, then we moved MVP, customers were really happy, and then we showed to enterprise architects, and they say, look, this is really nice, but we have a roadmap in our enterprise that apparently, no. So after that point, we are creating this hierarchy of needs, we are defining the priorities. Another example is this one. Must have, on-demand IT infrastructure, That means cloud DevOps ready, some multiple data science tools, data science sandbox. And on top, we have visualization, A/B testing for different machine learning models to see how those perform in production. And where this idea came from? It came from Dropbox. They use something similar with site reliability testing. If something goes down, so nice to have services at Dropbox are the first to switch off. But those must have, those should be running. So this is the whole hierarchy of needs. This is Dropbox idea, and we started using for our prototyping and new tools initiatives as well. Then knowledge gaps. This is quite obvious. So we have Pluralsight, we have technical documentation, Coursera, so I will not spend a lot of time here. But those are external trainings. What I would like to speak about is technical support. Right now we have this rule that before starting any technology evaluation or looking for technology limitations, we write to technical support. And the reason for this is because in many cases they will provide us some additional information. Maybe someone already did this. Another reason is politely they will write that what you are trying to achieve is stupid. And I've been there. And the third one is that they might be actually interested in the outcome of that proof of concept. And it happened to us with Microsoft Azure. We're working on a service called Azure Logic Apps. And the service was still in preview. And it happened that I raised the ticket. And Microsoft Azure said that, look, we have a few developers that would like to talk to you. And then we ended up, just random guys like us, we ended up on a call with Microsoft developers. And eventually, our suggestions were included in production version. So if you are planning to use this prototyping, I encourage you to first reach out to technical support. And this person, the last one showing something, here I wanted to showcase external consultants. And quite often I hear that external consultants are really expensive, and it's quite difficult to find external consultant that is not biased because he will be a Microsoft guy, he will be Amazon guy, Cloudera or someone else. So I agree that it's quite difficult to find someone who you can trust. But if someone is raising this argument that external consultants are really expensive, I'm not sure. Because let's take this example. We had one platform, and then came a requirement that we'll be getting telemetry data. That means machine data. In our team, no one had previous experience with that, so we thought, okay, we need to evaluate a few databases. Let's say there is HBase, Cassandra, Vertica. And then what we did, let's assume we are in one team. I said, okay, you take HBase for 2 weeks. You take MongoDB, you take Cassandra. 2 weeks, 3 guys, and we have absolutely no guarantee that they will find all the limitations. And look, those are 2 guys, 2 weeks, 3 guys. So it's a lot of cost to company. And you are not sure either this will be working or not. While external consultants, they might just ping to the right direction from the beginning. And it happened to us with Hadoop cluster in Azure. We're working heavily on performance. We're trying to get that thing run faster, but it didn't. So one person just evaluated what we did, and very politely he said, look guys, what clients are asking? They're asking for a fast, agile, nimble Mini Cooper. What you are building a huge tank. And we just went back to our PCs, we looked at the code and just looking, is it really true? And yeah, that was a huge tank. And instead of throwing shields, what we wanted to do, we wanted to add additional RAM, additional CPU, just like putting a more powerful engine to this tank. So I'm really glad that that time, this external consultant really saved our life. Moving next is review the architecture. So how often do you have team retrospectives? Just one every week, once every 2 weeks, once a month. So what I wanted to show you is architecture retrospective. Let's say we have our architecture. We have a database, some UI, some message queue, some layer here. What we started doing, we started discussing with the whole team what is working, what is not working. And then everyone has those fancy cards, and everyone can just approach and say, look, we have a problem with database because our indexes are rebuilding, like taking 12 hours to rebuild. There is no way statistics are not updating automatically. Another one is saying, look, we are using Azure Event Bus, and the message limitation size is 256 kilobytes, and this is stopping us. And then you end up, someone says, I think users don't know how to use our UI. Sure, this is not an issue, but those two, you are able to identify what is not working, and those are some pain points that you can start looking into in detail. And the whole idea for this, we took from this really great book. Have you ever seen it? So I encourage you, because it's quite a short book, but it talks about Agile and about architecture and Agile teams very beautifully. What Simon Brown discusses in addition to this is, don't forget about non-functional requirements. What happened for us quite a few times, we're focusing on new functionality, we're introducing new database, and what about backup? What about security? What about privacy, maintainability, etc.? Ivory architectures, Ivory Tower, or there will be another naming, PowerPoint architectures. It happened quite a few times that architect is coming, he's drawing a nice PowerPoint, nice architecture, and then he says, look, all what you need, you find just some bunch of developers, and they will code it. It's the most important thing is this architecture, my PowerPoint. Development is just a commodity. So what Simon suggests, every architecture that someone suggests you to do something, ask to provide some code or prove that his or her architecture works with code. Do some prototype in addition to that PowerPoint. And the third item is be aware of cultural differences. I'm working mostly with Scandinavian companies. That means teams that are almost self-organizing. And the technical discussions look completely differently than the ones that we're having with offshore team from India, where you need very specific details and the teams are very hierarchical. So you need to be aware of what people like to hear and how they approach different problems. Another great quote that I love, especially that proves this point that we need architecture review, from Release It. Great book about how software fails. And the quote is, your early decisions make the biggest impact on the eventual shape of your system. It's a terrible irony that these very early decisions are also the least informed. It happens quite often. Let's just do it. We'll fix it later. It's quite simple now. So what happens after 6 months? Then you need additional 1 month to fix that thing that it would have taken 1 hour. So by doing this architecture revision, you are able to inform all the team about bad points, about weak points, so that you can fix early enough. Next one is track your efforts. Sometimes it happens that all those technology evaluations and nice tools evaluations, you might hear that, okay, IT guys, they like new tools, so let's just give them, let's just let kids play with it. And what happens then? They say, okay, you have production systems that you need to support, you need some functionality that you need to build. So you're prototyping, you like software, aren't you? So use your weekend for that. or you have some spare time during evening. If it's successful, then we say it's a company success. We are innovative. If it's failure, you just wasted a few hours of your evening time. So what I would suggest, that be transparent with you, with your team, with your clients, and be transparent what you are building, even those are prototypes that may fail, but be transparent and say everything that we are trying new tools. And for us, that was issue how to log that, how to log that in Jira, how to ensure that we are keeping the progress. So we started using spikes for that. And spike is a task that is just aiming at answering a specific, or just gathering information rather than producing something. And then we have technical spikes to evaluate the potential performance, to evaluate specific implementation technologies, and develop confidence. That development team is confident about this technology. Then we have functional spikes. Is this something that what we are building? Is this something important to our users? Is something that is functional enough so we can use wireframes, prototypes, and then ask for feedback? Let's take an example. As a consumer, I want to see my daily energy use in a histogram so that I can quickly understand my past, current, and projected energy consumption. It might seem like a simple user story, and if you already know where this daily energy use data is, if you know what customer, how he or she wants to see that, it's quite simple. But if you have no idea where this daily energy use is located, you have no idea what customer wants to see, maybe he wants to see this daily energy use on his Xbox. So then an example would be for functional spike, to identify what customer wants, how it should look for him. Is it mobile? Is it web? And technical spike, locate where the data is. Is it push? Is it pull? Lesson number 7, documentation. A few times it happened for us that you remember that cowboy. And as cowboys, we forgot to document. And with prototypes, it happens that sometimes you don't even have a code to commit. Or the code that you are committing is so ugly that better not be committed at all. So for us, the best experience is when we document everything that we are trying. Versions, what was working, what was not working, what failed. Because in one example, it happened to us that after 6 months that we evaluated one technology, they released a major update. And we had no idea what we tested those 6 months ago. So once you document very in detail, it's much, much easier. And how this documentation should look like, it's up to you. It can be just a diary that you just write what is working, what is not. What I find really helpful to myself is Evernote. Evernote is very nice tool that has nice integration with Chrome. And if I'm just using Google, I'm writing some technology that I might have used a few months ago. Evernote is just showing me, look, you have a few notes. You have already did that. Maybe it's just me, I'm having memory issues, but it helps definitely to remember what you did without any additional effort. Because I believe a lot of us are using Google on a daily basis. And the last point, stop starting and start finishing. This is taken from Eric Nyberg's amazing speech. The idea here is that we have idea and then there is a solution. It might seem that it's quite simple and it looks like a nice walk, nice romantic walk. What happens then? We start looking at something else. In our case, we're .NET guys, Microsoft environment. And there was one requirement to build a user-defined function for Hive using Java. So instead of asking someone to do that in, I believe, in 1 hour, we wanted to install IDE. Once you install IDE, then you need some plugins. And the best, third one. you need some shortcuts. For that 1 hour task, you need to spend 2 days because it's not working from the first time. And then you have your solution. And all of a sudden, this romantic path turns out into murder. Another story about this stop starting and start finishing is about minimal viable product that we used the first time for sales team. And the idea was that sales team, they were not believing that using machine learning, we can identify customers that might be interested in specific product. So instead of building the whole infrastructure, the whole integration with CRM and etc., someone decided to have this crazy technology called CSV and Outlook. So data analysts, they just created a list of customers that they might be interested in this saving account. And using Outlook, they sent to sales teams. And sales, they just called a few customers from that list. And they were so surprised that almost everyone from that list was interested in the product. So that was a point for sales just to ask and give budget for the whole integration. And now that was my last lesson. So do you have any questions before I give you a summary?
No questions? All clear?
All clear, yeah.
Maybe you'll think something later.
I'm interested, how many of you are using Microsoft Azure?
Raise your hands.
Yeah, a few. And what about Amazon? Almost the same. I'm really surprised because in Nordics, Amazon is really growing. And that's the reason we're having those prototyping and those proof of concepts. Because as team at Cognizant, we would like to be up to date with what Microsoft release. Microsoft just goes to teams and to clients. They say, we have this new technology. But Microsoft is not creating solutions. They're asking us. So this is the reason we're so playing with those prototypes.
What is the size of a prototyping team in your case, more or less?
It's very different. It's starting from 2. It might be even 15 people.
Which kind of roles are involved?
Since we are working mainly with big data, so it's data engineers, data scientists, and then sometimes it might be even domain people from marketing. So it depends. But the maximum size was 50 or 12, I believe. And that was team, a couple of people sitting in India, a couple in Vilnius, and 2 people in Oslo.
How long are you using this prototyping approach, and how easy or hard was to get budget for that?
I would say it's our daily work to have team in Vilnius who are up to date with those tools. So the budget is there. Was it difficult? We are still learning. Yeah, I see one question.
Yeah, which people involved for
There is this saying that there are T-shaped professionals. Have you heard that? So T goes like you need to be very skilled at one technology, and then you need to know a lot about domain, about something, what happens in company. But there is a new approach that instead of T, you should be pi. That you need to have those 2. You should be very strong in 2 areas, and then across that. So if you are able to identify people who are skilled in 2 different areas, let's say data engineering, some great skills about databases, but in addition, something about statistics, and then they know about marketing, this is a perfect person.
More hands?
Yeah.
What is typical life cycle? You made a prototype, and how long do you use
Yeah, maybe I haven't said that, but with prototypes, we're throwing away prototypes. What we have after prototype, we have documentation. So after prototype, we have this evaluation session. Is it something that we can offer to clients? And then we start building MVP. And when it comes to MVP, it might be even a year. But this prototype, usually as a rule, we throw it. We just keep what we learned, this documentation. So agree on naming, identify questions, define this hierarchy of needs, review the architecture, as you see here, to identify some weak points, track efforts, document, and stop starting, start finishing. So this is my message for today. Thank you.